Sarah, as you know, it is unbelievably hot right now, and I don't know if you can hear it, but these air conditioning units are going full throttle. Now, I'm a little bit scared to be up here. I had to stay a little bit towards the wall, and Gary's a little bit more of a daredevil, so he's standing right here. And as you can see, it is a complete mess right now. There's mud everywhere, but don't worry, the Friends of Grand Island Parks is actually completely renovating this garden. Spencer, it is an exciting day because the Grand Theater is finally reopening after being closed for 15 months. How does it feel to be back, you know, after being gone for almost 2 years and having not being able to do it during the pandemic? How does that feel?
It broke our hearts.
For people who are unvaccinated, the Central District Health Department is actually going to be administering the vaccine. I'm going to move out of the way right here at the First Aid Center here at Fauner Park, right by the Nebraska building.
Throughout Phase 1B, the department has been giving leftover doses to people 65 or older and even school staff, but they say it's always subject to change. Specifically on the northwest side of Highway 281, which happens to be District 2, but this actually poses a problem. And when they do take it off, they need to either put it in their purse, bag, or lap to avoid placing it on contaminated surfaces. If you're struggling like me to get your car to start in these freezing cold temperatures, then it might have something to do with your battery.
Mechanics over at Tom Dinsdale Automotive in Hastings say that's not the only issue people run into during the cold winter months. On days when it's below freezing, the fluids in people's cars start to chill, which can also cause them to stall and stop. They suggest people heat their cars for 10 to 15 minutes before they take off.
Those fluids need to basically kind of thin out a little bit to make sure they're lubricating all the internal components of your engine, your transmission, because that can affect basically how they wear.
Richardson suggests people get their cars serviced just before winter hits to get their temperatures checked and to make sure they have enough fluids inside their cars like oil and also coolant. If this liquid is low, more than likely it will keep the heater from working properly.
At that time, those fluids are always checked. Same thing as far as your tires. When we're having the season change, as far as fall into winter, let's take a look at those treads. To make sure you have plenty of tread depth, make sure the tires are inflated.
Over at Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center in Hastings, managers say most times people don't even realize their tires are bad until it's too late.
You can't stop, you can't take off. A lot of times when you see somebody off of the side of the road, it's just that's when they realized, hey, I can't do this the way I should.
Mechanics encourages people to keep emergency supplies and jumper cables at all times in case of an emergency in this weather.
Are you ready? Tutti Frutti.
Students are learning lessons in a COVID-19 world, and while most are attending classes on site,
Tell me what you want to tell me, and then we're going to go to recess.
there are about 400 students in the Grand Island Public School District who continue to learn from home.
At first, I would say it was a little bit rocky, but it's really smoothed out and it's pretty great now.
Krista Sherwick, a second grade teacher at GIPS, has been teaching students virtually all school year.
We are in front of our computers in our Zoom class, talking to each other from 8 to about 9. I give them a 5-minute break or so because they're in front of the screen. But then we're on doing math and writing.
GIPS has an entire network of people working solely with these students. They have a virtual principal, teachers, a social worker, and more staff. Teachers say this amount of support contributes to the program's success.
Our model is very similar to what students are experiencing in the classroom. Parents aren't expected to do the teaching.
Virtual teachers struggle with attendance and keeping students engaged, but Sherwick communicates with parents to help them get back on track.
Sometimes the parents will say, hey, they're just not paying attention. I worked with them. Can you spend a little more time with them? And so then we just create those times where I can work with a student one-on-one.
Back in March, teachers were giving parents and students more independent time to learn the material, but now they teach students from the beginning to the end of the school day to make sure children are fully supported. Diamond Nunnally, Local 4 News, Grand Island. Some people are feeling a whole lot better about Draft 2 of the Nebraska Board of Education's new health standards.
So far, what I've seen looks a lot better.
But then there are others who feel
the words that come to mind are extremely disappointed.
This comes after months of scrutiny over draft 1 of the standards, so much so hundreds of parents have spoken out against them the past several months, saying they were teaching kids too young about sex.
This curriculum is not age appropriate.
Governor Pete Ricketts even chimed in, claiming they were infringing on parents' rights.
They don't have to do this. They can drop this entirely.
Senator Ray Aguilar and about 30 other senators pushed for a resolution helping school districts opt out of the standards. He also agreed draft 1 was overstepping its bounds.
I thought it had no place in public education. If parents want to share that information with their kids, that's fine. But it's not the teacher's job.
The Board of Education apparently took people's concerns in mind, because any talk of sexual orientation and gender identity was pretty much taken out of draft 2. Besides briefly describing the difference between sex and gender in the 7th grade.
Goals within this are still there, but the goals are ultimately that we have a solid partnership with parents and schools.
18-year-old Kendall Barling is sad topics such as family structures have been scrapped. He believes some of his peers would have benefited from this type of education in school, while he was being bullied for having 2 moms.
There are a lot of teens in our society that would have really benefited from these standards, and a lot of those standards have disappeared, and so a lot of our teens aren't going to get that benefit.
You would never think anything like this would happen in a small town. But it does. It happens everywhere, so.
The shooting in Juniata that left 1 person dead and an officer injured last night left neighbors nearby shocked.
When we got the civil defense thing on our phone that told us to shelter down, stay in place, it was like, okay.
Ellen Ondrak, who has lived in the neighborhood for nearly 2 years, never expected this.
No, not at all.
Wayne Peters, who's also lived in the area for years, also didn't see this coming.
We had an armed robbery at Casey's one time years ago, but other than that, no.
At around midnight last night, Peters heard the alarm before hearing helicopters and gunshots outside.
I heard about 12 total. Had 4 it sounded like small arms fire, probably 9mm. The last 4 sounded like a rifle shot. So.
Ondrak didn't hear the initial gunshots, but she did see police surrounding the neighborhood.
Then we heard helicopter overhead, and there was just a lot of traffic around this block.
Wherever they were during the incident, both of them had this on their minds.
Safety.
And all Ondrak could do was pray.
I did a lot of praying for what was going on, and I just more concerned with trying to keep us safe in our home, because you never know. This was just really close.
Diamond Nunnally, Local 4 News, Juniata. Alicia, India has reported more than 18.7 million coronavirus cases since the pandemic began. People young and old are dying left and right, and one couple in Hastings is constantly worrying about their loved ones back home.
We are just living 2 realities. One is like we are getting back to normal life up here, and the second one is, that we are struggling to see our, and very painful to see our close ones dying every day.
Every text, every call, or notification has the Sharastafa family worried who might be next.
We dread opening our WhatsApp messages because every day without fail we'll have one of the near and dear ones. Somebody has lost their lives over there, be it in your own family, somebody's cousins.
Just about a week ago, Rakesh received a phone call from a cousin saying both his aunt and uncle tested positive, and when they were admitted into the hospital, there weren't enough beds to care for his aunt.
Those are the times, that you just feel like very helpless, and what can you do?
Anshula lost one of her cousins to COVID-19. She died waiting for a ventilator because she was 107th on the list.
People are not dying from COVID. People are dying because they can't get oxygen and ventilators on time because we don't have enough.
Rakesh tried to send a breathing machine to India, but it didn't make it in time.
When you have all the access to yourself, but then you cannot provide it or help them, and that's the that feeling of helplessness is what bothers me, at least.
Earlier this week, the Biden-Harris administration announced they were delivering $100 million worth of vaccines and supplies to India. They said in a tweet, just as India sent assistance to the United States as our hospitals were strained, we are determined to help India in its time of need. President Biden also signed a proclamation earlier this week barring entry into India. Shrivastava say not being able to see family for more than a year has been the toughest part.
this is the time your family needs you and you can be there.
After this interview was recorded, we found out Rakesh's uncle, who had been in the hospital, passed away today. We send our condolences to the Sharastafa family.